From the Times and the Sunday Times, this is the story on Saturday. I'm Manveen Rana. It's the weekend before Christmas, and we all know what that means. Kids everywhere, and let's face it, they're not alone, are compiling lengthy lists for Santa.
Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas!
But where does the idea of Father Christmas come from? What is the origin story of this red-robed superhero? And how does it involve a Turkish bishop, a wayward English merrymaker, and a Republican icon of the American Civil War? The story today, the true story of Father Christmas. The true story of Father Christmas. If I'm in Venice at Christmas, there's a church I always visit. It keeps the celebrations in perspective. The church is the Basilica Santa Maria Gloriosa de Frare, although the locals just call it the Frare. Inside is a Titian masterpiece, the stupendous altarpiece of the Assumption, as well as his enormous tomb and a poignant John the Baptist carved by the great Donatello. But I hurry past all of these and head for the sacristy and the small triptych by Bellini. Triptychs are altarpieces with 3 parts. With this one, the trick is to ignore the big bit in the middle with a fabulous Virgin and Child serenaded by angels, and to look instead at the 2 old boys with beards on the left. The one on the right is St. Peter, Christ's beloved disciple and the first pope. Ignore him. Focus instead on the other greybeard, because that is Father Christmas. Or Santa Claus, or Kris Kringle, or whatever else your favourite name might be for the chimney-haunting, reindeer-riding gift-giver of the Yule festivities. Bellini doesn't call him Father Christmas. That name hadn't been invented, especially in Venice. In the triptych, his title is St. Nicholas of Bari, and although he's dressed in green rather than red, and looks too thin to pass for the happy fat man of Lapland, it's definitely him. Because his story prepares us for pretty much the whole caboodle when it comes to Santa myths. St. Nicholas was a bishop of Myra in ancient Turkey, a 4th century Christian hero renowned for giving presents. The kindly bishop was passing a house one night and heard the dad of the family lamenting that his 3 daughters had to be sold into prostitution because he could not afford their wedding dowries. Moved to tears, Nicholas came back in the dead of night and threw 3 pouches of gold down the chimney. The next day, the relieved dad found the gold by the fireside and realised he did not need to turn his daughters into sex workers after all. The Chronicles of the Saints do not record if peals of merry laughter rang out across Myra that happy morning, but I bet they did. Chimneys, presents, night rides. St. Nicholas had invented Christmas. In the ensuing decades, the gift-giving saint and his pouches of gold were remembered in art on countless occasions. He was particularly popular in the Eastern Church, where they generally envisaged him as a stern and bishopy presence. His fingers twisted in a complex digital signage, announcing that Christ was both man and God. St. Nicholas's middle finger was crossed over his index finger, while his ring finger was bent across the front to record Jesus' simultaneous presence in the Holy Trinity. In Nicholas's day, the bones of saints were more precious than gold. Guilt-sodden pilgrims believed that touching saintly bones could fast-track them to heaven. So a gang of Italian sailors returning from the Crusades dug up his body in Myra and took the bits back to Bari on the heel of the Italian boot. Thus, St. Nicholas of Myra became St. Nicholas of Bari. The few bones that remained, the small ones, were pocketed by the Venetians, hence Nicholas's importance in Venice. His feast day was December the 6th, and as his fame spread across Christianized northern Europe, a process began of assimilating him into the winter story. The Dutch were particularly keen on his nocturnal gift-giving, as it chimed closely with their fears for their own children. Even in Amsterdam, no one wanted their daughters to become sex workers. Santa, the Dutchman. December the 7th became a day when parents would give their children prezzies, and when Dutch settlers founded a colony in the New World and called it New Amsterdam, they took with them the legends about Sinterklaas, the abbreviated St. Nicholas. When New Amsterdam became New York, Sinterklaas quickened his transformation into Santa Claus. His name wasn't all that changed, so too did his appearance. What began as a set of bishop's robes and wobbly mitre was too flimsy to withstand the cold winds whistling through New York in December. So Sinterklaas swapped his ecclesiastical robes for a fur-lined coat and his mitre for a comfy hood. He began also to put on weight. As Sinterklaas grew fatter, he grew merrier. An anonymous American poem published in 1823 with the famous opening line, "'Twas the night before Christmas," filled in much of the missing detail.
"'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse."
Called the best-known verses ever written by an American, it added stuff about reindeers and flying sleds, and was so popular that scores of desperate poets popped up later to claim its authorship.
The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas would soon be there. When what to my wondering eyes did appear, but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer.
The jury is still out on the real writer. But words are merely words. For the world to fully imagine Santa Claus, someone needed to draw him. That someone was the cartoonist Thomas Nast, a German immigrant since dubbed the father of American caricature. When the American Civil War broke out, Nast, a Republican and fervent supporter of the Union, set about enthusiastically enlisting Santa Claus for the Yankee side. Nast's cartoons of Santa, dense with pro-Yankee symbolism, had him sporting a winter outfit inspired by the Stars and Stripes, with red as the dominant colour. By the time he finished conscripting Santa for the North, in the Christmas special he illustrated for Harper's Weekly in 1862, the old boy looked passably like the Santa of today, except for the cavalry sword dangling by his side and the army knapsack in which he carried his gifts. But wait, you'll be thinking, did the Americans invent all of it? No, they didn't. Because running concurrently with the arrival of Santa Claus, and in most aspects preceding him, was the parallel development of an eerie character called Father Christmas. And Father Christmas was specifically English. His roots were older than St. Nicholas of Bari and could be traced deep into pagan times, when the winter solstice was accompanied by an annual commemoration involving hefty feasting and drinking. Some authorities see connections between Christmas and the Roman festival of Saturnalia, when the ancients, too, went on mad, drunken benders. From my vantage point, the Roman angle is a coincidence. What really counts is something unshiftable in the British character. When Christmas comes, it's time to party. Throughout the Middle Ages, a succession of gaunt, withered, drunken scarecrows in rags, their heads topped with sprigs of holly, were imagined as embodiments of the Yule wildness. Their successors still haunt the steps of our shops today on the night before Christmas. The textures of the pagan Yule cling on also in the shape of chocolate logs and kissing mistletoe. So heartily did the English enjoy their drunken Christmas that when Cromwell and the Puritans beheaded the king and took over the government, their cruelest national act was to ban Christmas entirely. Not until the Restoration of 1660 was the celebration allowed again. Thus, Old Father Christmas found himself elevated temporarily to the rank of upstart hero and symbol of the good old days. But until the Victorian age, the English Father Christmas did not give presents, did not go ho ho ho, did not spread good cheer, and showed no sign whatsoever of liking children. On the contrary, in Murmer's plays and village theatrics, the scrawny Christmas embodiment began to blur with the mischievous December presence known as the Lord of Misrule, and grew increasingly wayward. When Dickens published A Christmas Carol in 1843, John Leech's famous imagining of the ghost of Christmas Present shows Scrooge shivering before a drunken Jesus look-alike with a head of wild holly and a green robe opened at the neck to reveal a hairy chest.
The arms were long and muscular, the hands the same, as if it held uncommon strength. It wore a tunic of the purest white, and round its waist was bound a lustrous belt, the sheen of which was beautiful. In its hand, a branch of fresh green holly.
But as the Victorians grew richer and more materialistic, the allure of America's Christmas textures also began to grow, and the unconnected figures of Father Christmas and Santa Claus started to meld. The more industrialized Britain became, the greater the need grew for a kindly and unneurotic Christmas present. And then he put on the pounds. Amazingly, it wasn't until the 1930s that these transatlantic imaginings coalesced fully with the appearance of the Coca-Cola Santa. In essence, he was Thomas Nast's Sinterklaas made jollier, fatter and ruddier by the artist Haddon Sundblom, who modelled him on a retired salesman living next door called Lou Prentice. When Prentice died, Sundblom began using himself as the example. Recognizing that Christmas was now principally a festival of buying and giving, and the traditional red costume of Sinterklaas rhymed accidentally but happily with the color of their label, Coca-Cola began flooding the posters and billboards of America with Sunbloom's Porky Santa. We've been worshipping him ever since.